This
add it.
conference will now be recorded.
So, we'll come up with some concept plans and then test them with furniture, layouts and that. And in the back of our minds, the things we have to keep thinking about is flexibility, flexibility, flexibility. There's some libraries I've worked on 6 times. Plano Haggard Library is a good example of it. I worked with them the first time 32 years ago, and I've worked on everything since then. And we ripped out some things that we put in initially. So the least we can build in, the better we're off. The more we can do it with flexible furniture and walls that go up and down or open up, the better we're off. So those are all kinds of things to keep in mind. So today what I want to do is go through this PowerPoint, and you should have also got a copy of that. And I'm going to ask you to do some homework at the end, and the homework's going to be sort of 3 parts, and I'll review it at the end. But one of them is I started with this Wordle, which is just a lot of different words about what libraries are today. And they're to me one of the most important buildings in any community because they serve everyone from cradle to grave. And people will come to the library different times to use it in different ways. And so there's not one size fits all. There's not one kind of space or feel. I really think a successful library is a destination, and therefore it has different areas. Children's, when they come in, know exactly where the space is. Whether they can read or not, there doesn't really need to be a sign. It should just tell them where to go. It should feel comfortable to them. Same thing with seniors or families or homeschoolers. So those are all things we want to keep in mind as we think about the library of the future, the Largo Vista community, as well as where we think it's going in the next 10, 20, 30 years. So, I don't know why my cursor is not working there. So I'm going to start with, even though I know we're not really thinking that much about the outside of the building, that part's pretty well done, and it's exciting to see that it's very transparent. I do want to walk through a couple images of some libraries that are happening around the country. They have a lot of things in common. Transparent, they draw people in. There's a lot of daylight. There's a variety of spaces, and spaces are getting broken up into smaller areas, which again serves well in the climate we're in right now with the pandemic. How do we create more small spaces for fewer people, where a family could sit together or someone could work by themselves? Libraries have already been going that direction, but the last 2 months, I think, is going to push them thinking about things in a little different way. We still do need families to be able to be together when they come to the library, so that if you do have 4 kids and you want to work together, that there's a place for that you can do that. And color is also a big part of it. Color really affects the atmosphere and the mood. So thinking about how to use color in the library and offset that to create different areas, different feels. The connection to the outside is very important. We want to be able to see the outside, but also sometimes connect. Your plan right now has a big covered porch area. How can that be used to its best benefit? It's also about creating special spaces. I was fortunate when I did the Southfield Public Library a number of years ago that we went and visited children's museums around the country and really talked to them and understand about early literacy and how do you engage children in learning in different ways. How do you, thinking about overscaling and underscaling, kind of like the movie Honey, I Shrunk the Kid. How do we create spaces that kids can be in that encourage that? Years ago, I had a chance of working with a group in Schaumburg, Illinois, and the teens said they wanted a twilight room. And what they meant by that was a room similar to this, kind of a dark room with comfy chairs that they can curl up with. So thinking about creating those different kinds of spaces. Going backwards again. Thinking about a variety of seating. The picture on the left to me is not a good example necessarily, other than the color, and the chairs are probably comfortable, but they're all the same. Again, I had a chance in a large library to test over 100 chairs with the public for 2 months. What we found is whether you were tall or short, young or old, what you came to the library for, you picked a different chair. So not one size fits all. So having one lounge chair and one reading chair throughout the building for adults and children, to me, is not a good solution. The one on the right, people will sit in all kinds of interesting places. So creating those options is important. You know, libraries are also integrating a lot with the art. This Chinatown branch in Chicago, scattered throughout. And they use things like curtains to delineate different spaces and open things up and change them. They did a lot with curved shelving and curved seating to invite interaction and use of the space. There's also that, you know, we were talking about porches, and porches, especially with covering for the rain and sun, you know, kind of places to be outside, but to be covered. There's also that need for study rooms or collaborative learning or tutoring type rooms. And I've learned that a variety of sizes are important, but most importantly, it's to create a sense of visibility so that it's safe for anyone using it. And I think this is a really good example where only 2 are enclosed. They've really created 3 different spaces here that could be used by 1 or 2 or 4 people. Again, another example of porches and outdoor spaces. Now, the next 20 or so slides are experiences, are visual images of activities, spaces, experiences in the library. And of these sheets, I would like you after this to pick 15 to 20 that you think are very important for your community, that you think we want to make sure that we include them. So, you know, some of these won't apply maybe, or there's not land to do them. But again, that connection to the outside, whether it's a porch like on the lower left, that's in Thurmont, Maryland, by Camp David. That library was in a wetlands, and the only way to get the square footage we needed to cantilever over wetlands. So it was used to create educational as well. There's plaques explaining that. People come to the library to learn, so ways to bring that learning outside is important as well. So things like outdoor classroom, or a lot of libraries are integrating parks or playgrounds. Or that one on the upper right is awesome public, and you know, they created the roof gardens and with used the solar panels as a way to sunscreen, which I thought was, I think the outdoor spaces are some of the most successful at the Austin Public. But we see children's courtyards with for exploration and discovery, where artists have integrated different icons that children can hunt for. But there's a lot of ways to use both the inside and the outside and get people in the community to participate and take part in. And we'll talk about that a little later on some of the others. So again, people come to the library to learn. So libraries often are very good examples of being sustainable or green buildings by including things like wind power or solar panels or sunscreens or water harvesting. A lot of the libraries in Central and South Texas, as well as North Texas, are doing a lot with water harvesting and green roofs. Awesome. Now, what kind of services? And again, some of the libraries that have had drive-through pickups or pickup windows or drive-through returns, and even some that haven't, like San Marcos, have still provided material delivery in that you could put books on reserve and then have certain hours of the day that you could come and pick them up. whether it was from a table sitting under cover in front of the library or through a pickup window, and be able to return materials through a drop that then could be, sanitized before they went back out. And in our card society, so many are looking at that. I don't think your site probably is conducive to a drive up, but possibly a walk up could work, where you would park at the curb and things like amenities like bike racks for people to ride. I know my neighborhood, I've seen more kids and families riding bikes than I have in the 30 years we've lived here. Bikes are now a big mode of transportation. Things like lighting, how do we light the outside and light the exterior spaces to make them usable for outdoor programming and other community events. Things like outdoor furniture, again, that's Boston Public Library with its fantastic views. And things like signage, is there a need to have a kind of signage that advertises upcoming programs or the library, what's happening in the community. We also want to find ways to make the library staff's jobs easier, a larger building, more spaces. Usually libraries' hours keep increasing. How do we make how do we make it more efficient? Some of the things that have been happening are things like hold lockers. So someone, again, could put materials on hold. They get put into them again, much like the Amazon lockers. You get a text with the code and the locker number, and you go and pick them up. Things like book vending. We're seeing those come in where they might be in a lobby area that is open 24/7, or like sitting outside like a Redbox might, again, where you could get certain popular materials through book vending. But in contrast to that, we're also seeing the importance of, green space, the non-tech, places to just sit and think, views out to see and contemplate. And even things like if parking can't be right by the door, is a way to make it be a little more fun and encourage people, to cross and come into the library. As I said, libraries have changed a lot, and they've changed a lot since I started working in them in the early 70s. And many people say, they're dying. I'm seeing the opposite. I'm seeing build it and they will come. Door counts and even circulation at many libraries are at an all-time high. So we're not getting rid of books. We are sometimes seeing collections shrink. It's more important that the quality of the collection than quantity. I've had the opportunity to work with libraries where we've cut the collection in half, but put it with more face-out displays and lower shelving, introduced benches in the stacks for browsing. And one of the early ones we did that with was in Lafayette, Louisiana, and the circulation from before was about 1 to 8% of the nonfiction was out at any one time. After we introduced the benches and overlaid the bisac and brought the shelving down, the circulation for nonfiction went up to 48%. And so where they thought they would house less books because the shelves were lower, and much like yours, your shelving's low already. What they found is, they made it so easy to browse that people checked out a lot more. So actually the library held more because so many were out at one time. But also thinking about book displays and end panel displays. Many libraries were putting the shelving on casters, especially in children's areas and areas we want flexibility to move them around. Or in the Midlands Centennial Library, we did it so that we could move things around and create 1,000 square foot area for national displays. So they had one come in exhibit that was Bob Hope. Another one they had come in was Dora the Explorer, which was an interactive. But through our research, we found we needed 1,000 to 1,200 square feet that we could grab when those exhibits happened, and then when they went away, move things back around. As I was speaking before about making libraries' jobs easier, we also want patrons easy to be able to see where to go for help. So doing desks that are mobile and changeable, and with your building being much longer, there may need to be a second desk, or desks may be somewhat different. Smaller ones that can be moved around give you more flexibility over time. They can be put together and all in one place, or again, change. Self-service holds. I don't know if you're doing self-service holds now, but again, that with self-checkout helps ease what librarians are doing. It frees them up to help people with computers, put on programs, help be readers advisory, talk about what I like John Grisham, what other authors would I like to read, and some of the other tools and technology, things like laptop dispensers. Many urban libraries are using those so people can swipe their library card, get out a laptop, and then go sit anywhere in the library. We've been doing it on a low-tech way on some of the small rural talker libraries and some of the other libraries around the state and other states, where we've done a laptop cart with that when people could go to the desk and check one out. It makes a little more sense in these days because it allows people to go sit anywhere. They can find a remote corner at a table, or they can sit in a lounge chair with a personal table pulled up and use it. When they go back, they completely wipe them clean and re-download it. My guess is these manufacturers will come up with a device now that will also sanitize them, just like we're going to have to come up ways of sanitizing materials as they return. Already vendors, I've gotten 3 different emails about screens, clear acrylic screens at help desk and other transaction points. So things will change, but I still think people coming to the library to be around other people. You see it in academic libraries. We call it study alone. People go there to just like, and I think a Starbucks is a similar example. You go there, you see all these people by themselves working. Well, they could be working social. We like to be around others. And so even though we're doing social distancing, I think part of the reason people are going to the park and out walking, so they can at least say hi to someone, even if it's 15 feet away. And I think the libraries are still going to be important. And it's about children. I'm a firm believer that, that children's experience in libraries have become so important. Early literacy, helping parents learn how to play with their kids again after having them over in too many activities that they forget how to even go outside and play or play with one another. And the library is that obvious place. I think that 0 to 5 and that early literacy is so important. But some libraries, I'm working with Virginia Beach right now on a master plan. And when visiting their libraries, they had these great early literacy areas. But for older kids, anyone over 5 or 6, there wasn't a single table or chair. Their books were there on tall shelving and rows of them, but nowhere for them to sit among the books or to use the space. So we want to make sure that we don't just concentrate on that 0 to 5, that we think of all children or they get to be whatever the tweens or the teens are. And we're seeing many libraries are zoning their areas to be from the little to the older and then oldest, so that kids can find a place. But creating spaces that encourage exploration and discovery, I think, are very important. From things like that Reading Nooks, which is in Keller, the word story time, spell these little carpeted seats. And the city manager and mayor said, I don't know why you're doing that. They're not going to do it. These were taken at the opening. Immediately, kids knew exactly what to do with them. It's also a way to get people involved in the community, in that they may want to design some digital wall covering like that one in the lower right, or donate to that upper right one, the 3D reading with the sailboats, is in Houma, Louisiana. And we had groups fighting to have their name on one of the sailboats. So there's lots of ways to use those specialties. It's about creating spaces for children's programming. You know, one that really can be designed for kids might have a child-sized door, which that multi-purpose one does. You can barely see it. There's a little arch, and I think there's a child kind of sitting in the doorway. But creating fun things like reading alcoves. That tree is in Southfield, Michigan, and that inside it is a chess set, and the pieces are dogs and cats. To educational technology, where that's in Centennial Library in Midland, where content was created that is projected onto the floor with speakers above, that kind of separate the noisy side of the library from the quiet side. Or, you know, the special entrance like children's on the lower left, again, that's in Midland Centennial. And the plastic panels are in the H, I, and the rest of the letters are inexpensive printed plastic that is just Velcroed in, so they can easily change that theme and look over time. The one on the lower right, that family restroom, is in Queen Creek, Arizona. I mean, it's a little over the top, but I think that the family restrooms, when anyone opens the door to go into any restroom, if they go in and say, wow, this looks nice, we found that we have no problem with any kind of graffiti or any destruction if it just looks nice. I mean, it just has some color, and it doesn't cost any more to do that. And it is about educational play, both inside and out. These are all, some of which a little over the top in that they're interior spaces. Most libraries would not probably want sand play inside their libraries, but if we can create outdoor spaces where there could be that outdoor classroom that might have sand and water play, or take some of these ideas like the light bright wall, again, Midland downtown has that in their children's area there. But thinking about what can we do that can be fun and inviting for children. We don't want to forget about teens. Teens will come if there's interesting spaces and computers and opportunities for them to use the library. By teens, my experience is it's usually those 11 to 14, maybe 15-year-olds. Usually the kids in junior and seniors in high school are using, if they come to the library, they're using it for research or working on projects with others. They don't have time to read for enjoyment that much anymore, or they may be volunteering in the library. But we do see a lot of libraries, you know, with gaming opportunities, as well as just using computers for work and their studies. And some of the gaming may be low tech, like checkers or chess, or the Bernie, Texas library where we did their teen area. Their teens wanted one of the huge strategy game tables that they could work on and then cover and be used for something else to that group coming back again. So knowing your teens and keeping the teen area flexible and changeable is important, because as one group ages out of this area, a new one will be coming up. And we want to think about different kinds of technology. A lot of libraries still are trying to offer computer classes, and it could be done in a designated computer lab more often than not. We're doing a more multi-purpose room that could be a makerspace one week, a technology lab the next, with laptops on a cart that are stored in the closet. Or it could be, you know, someone could come into this multi-purpose room and do bike repairs and show people how to do that, or a knitting class, or a small public. But we're also looking at integrating collaborative technology where people can come in and work together and share, or a media lab. That one in the lower left is in Southfield, no, that one's in Schaumburg, Illinois, where it's at the edge of the teen area, but can be used by anyone in the community to go in and record, video edit, record music, video. It has the lighting controls and all of that. And they've created some incredible work. Some of the things students have done and then used for their college applications have been fun to see. But even things like interactive walls and VR technology. The last year's IFLA was in Malaysia, and one of our topics that we had people talk about was VR technology. And it was amazing how libraries across the world are using this within the library, not only for teaching, but for learning, for even the design of their space, having architects create these 3D environments that then you can walk through. But the technology is always going to change. So you don't want to get too invested in one. You want to keep the spaces flexible enough to be able to change that technology. We also want to have a variety of spaces. We want to keep it as open as possible, but with libraries being so active now, if children's isn't separated or teens isn't separated, and there's pluses and minuses in not doing that or not doing that. I've taken out many walls that separated children's because the community demographics changed and the children's area needed to grow, and that wall was stopping it. One school of thought is that you let everything open and active and you create quiet enclosed quiet study like the upper left that may or may not have a fireplace as a place to go and get away and quiet, as well as creating things like that individual booth or that quiet room for one. It's called The Room, and it's fairly actually inexpensive. And some libraries are using it as a place where someone can go make a personal phone call rather than have their conversation for the whole world to hear, if they're not the type of people that would be considerate and go outside. But there's also things like these study pods that Agati creates. And even though they're not inexpensive, they're still half the price or less than creating an enclosed study room. We find that for many, especially one person using it, it works very well because they have a sense of privacy and somewhat quiet. But we also want to think about, other kind of program spaces. And so one of the homeworks I've given the staff is ideas of what size programs they put on now and want to put on, as well as what size community groups. So any of you that have any ideas on sizes of the spaces to accommodate what size groups doing what kind of activities will help us in the programming of the various programming. And it could be something like a multi-purpose meeting room. Again, we're seeing a lot of libraries build a fairly big one of these, both Bulverde in Texas and Bethany, Oklahoma, neither of which huge communities now put in 300-seat multi-purpose room that can be divided because they needed a place within the community for that many to come together. But creating spaces like those small group tutoring rooms or conference room or that flexible program room that could be used for lots of different things. The lower right is in Keller, Texas. Or things like 3D maker spaces or those kind of spaces. That one on the upper right is in Arlington's new downtown, and they have two side by side with a garage door that opens. And San Marcos is doing a similar thing, where one will be more hands-on technology, sewing and crafts and things like that, and the other one will probably be more technology with 3D printers and laser printers, or it may have computers for classes and that kind of thing. And we want to think about flexibility. There are good dividers. They're not inexpensive. The one in the upper left is a glass one, again in Schaumburg, Illinois. It gets used a lot. They can be solid and be a little less expensive. They work really, really well though. They really allow two things to go on either side. There are also ones that fold to the side. They're not quite as good and they take up floor space when they're folded, but they still work much better than many of the, kind of just visual accordion ones. And then, amenities. Many libraries are putting in coffee or vending areas. Cafes typically don't succeed. You have to have a large library with a lot of foot traffic. But also just doing a pot of coffee with a donation works. Again, maybe harder to do some of those things right now, but if things ever get close to being back to normal, that changes. And think about things like boat traffic and eating areas. That one with the little boy is, a place where you can go see the world from the inside out, and it's at the entrance to Southfield Men's Library, which the theme was World of Wonder or Wow. But also especially seating like the curved seating on the lower right. And then more kinds of spaces, from classrooms to social spaces to just spaces you can go in and create that might have different things to work with your hands. Or exhibit space. That one on the upper left, that's the Southfield area that can open and close by moving around and seating. This was their opening, and they have the Bob Hope exhibit there. But it can be things like 2D exhibit, so that you can have local artists have a exhibit up, or the local school class exhibit, or put up some of the art that's created within the library during programs. Exterior art too, sculptures, and really the library can be that cultural center within the community as well. Sorry, clicker's not working right. So that's the end of the pictures. So I'd like everyone, when we're done and off, to really look through those again and pick 15 to 20 or words on the Wordle that you think are very important that we think about for the library expansion and for the building program. Usually what we do with the program is we want it to be everything that we would consider. It will always obviously be probably way too big to fit into the space that we have, but that's not necessarily bad. That forces us to look at ways of using space creatively to do lots of different things and to keep it as flexible as possible. The other thing I'd recommend that you keep in mind is we're looking to the future. So we want to think about how the library is today and how people are using it, but also how it's changing. Libraries have changed dramatically. When I worked in libraries, both in high school and college, libraries were quiet places. People whispered. They were very serious. They were too quiet for me. I couldn't study in them. I could work in them, but I couldn't study in them. Today, they're very different. They're about interacting. So think about Largo Vista and where the library's role should be in the community, how it should meet the changing times, the changing demographics, and thinking to the future as you go through this. So with that, I want to turn it over to all of you to have an opportunity to talk about, kind of your vision for the library. If you don't want to talk about it, you can definitely write it down. The other part of your homework is to look at 3 kind of amenities factors, features within the existing library that you want to make sure we retain, and 3 features that you want to make sure go away, and the reason why. And it may be something as, if you work there, that the desk I work at, the height isn't comfortable. It may be, the main part of the library is too noisy. It can be any kind of things. It can be that we need a quiet reading room. I want the children's area to have these features. Whatever you think about is important. So with that, I'd like to, turn it over to any other comments, questions, suggestions.
Danelle, I have a couple of general questions, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Um, Things like when you're putting a design together, things like lighting and electrical outlets, is that part of the recommendation you would make? Would that be included in that?
Yes, as well as acoustics. Yes.
Okay. All right. How about colors and maybe flooring materials and stuff like that? Is that part of your overall recommendation?
It can be. My basic scope, right? Yeah, I think it's as a add alternate or a to be selected. But yes, I do a lot of that. But my basic scope goes through kind of concept design right now.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Yes.
It appeared from the slides that these were very large libraries. I personally would love to have seen some slides of libraries that are the same size that we are. That way we can get, I think, a better idea of what will fit into our specific library. And I noticed that my understanding is that our librarians need to have a line of sight to the people in the library. And it looked like a lot of these things that went on in the libraries, there would not have been a line of sight from the librarian.
Many of these are in small libraries. This one here, this enclosed quiet study, is in a 5,000 square foot library in Hanover Park, Illinois. A lot of these are from small libraries. This one down here, this open quiet, that's again another small library of about 8,000 square feet in Virginia. So, they're selected images. Many of these have very good line of sight and have, 1 or 2 staff in them at a time. But you're absolutely right. It's going to be a challenge with this big addition, right, the way it is right now, because it's shown as a pretty solid wall between your existing, and your existing building is a little bit of a challenge because of, the program room and the hallway and the restrooms are kind of down away and hidden from the main reading area. So it's definitely something we will look at and discuss, because I agree. But also library staff have to walk around. Anytime you get, more than probably 8,000 square feet, there's no way you can see it all. Even if you use the 66-inch shelving, which you have a lot of little kids are shorter than that. And the other thing we found is things like the quiet reading room that might have a glass front, or study rooms with a glass front, as long as there's spaces right by them where customers are using the library and can see in, it's not only that librarians can see them, it's that someone can see them. And that changes behavior greatly. So, but you're absolutely right. that sightline and layout is very important. And one of the things we want to make sure, and we've talked about it a little bit in our first kind of discussion with Jan, was that, we don't want to do anything that requires additional staffing. Additional staff with the current library is open 48 hours. That's really more than one person. That cost over 20 years is going to well exceed any money you spend on this project. So we want to be very cognizant that we're as efficient with staffing as possible. And I know you have a lot of great volunteers, but you can't always depend on volunteers. Maybe yours are better than some libraries.
My thinking was in the other room, well, since it's going to be almost a solid wall between the two, if there's a chance of possibly using video cameras in there, and at the librarian's desk, be able to put up those video cams.
Yeah, you can always do that. Someone usually isn't sitting there watching them unless it's a big urban library. But if something then is reported, you can go back and look. I'll go to Lafayette, Louisiana. They put up cameras in their library, even though they could see, this is the South Lafayette, they could see almost everything from their center desk that was in the middle of the library. And it's about a 27,000 square foot library, but a lot of that's meeting space. But someone broke their table in the teen area, and they were able to go back in the cameras, and it actually was the security guard sat on it while he was goofing around with some of the teens, and he broke it and never reported it. So yeah, cameras can be good, but they're usually better for going back and re-looking at what happened. If the cameras often also, you can hear what's happening. Sometimes hearing's actually more important than seeing, at least with certain age individuals in the library. But yeah, you can do cameras. You just can't have cameras in private areas. They could be at the door of the restrooms, but they couldn't be in the restrooms.
This is
Danelle?
Sharon. May I go
Yeah.
next?
Sure.
Okay. I'm wondering about the increase in connectivity to the web. I was at the library recently, and there's people in the parking lot who can access our Wi-Fi from outside of the building, and they are using it.
Yes, it's very good,
Perhaps
actually.
they don't have it at home, but I don't know as if we should plan a future with more schooling over the internet and working from home over the internet, and whether that should be something that we work into our wish list.
Yeah, I think you can't have enough. And I think it's great when libraries Wi-Fi spreads over into the parking lot. There's lots of people that don't have it at home. Their taxes are paying for it at the public library. It would be a shame. I had one library one time said, "Oh, well, we turn it off at night. We don't want anyone sitting in our parking lot." I said, "Why not? That's good security for you." Other people try to get police to park in their parking lot and work on their reports and that, having Wi-Fi there is great. A lot of libraries have hotspots that you can check out to families. And I know during this time, many libraries have tried to help individuals in their communities that don't have Wi-Fi at home, and therefore their kids have a very hard time learning, going to school from home, whereas at least if the library had it outside, they could take their laptop maybe they were given to by the school and at least sit in the parking lot and connect. So yeah, the more we can be connected, I think the better. and collaboration with schools and the public library, I think is very important, because like you're open in the evening, the school libraries are not. So, you're an important resource for the students and everyone in the community, in the evenings and the weekends. And that's why I was telling Jan, many libraries find that Sunday afternoons from 12 to 4 is their busiest time of the whole week. Kids come in and work on homework or work on projects. Families come in, get their materials. And so some libraries are opening a little later during the week so that they can free up hours to be open on Sunday afternoon.
In all of these photographs that you showed us, the one I was most taken with was the individual booths. And we're looking at a new building that is an empty square box, rectangular box, something like that. And I can see those individual booths just set up along that one long wall, offering a little bit of privacy. They're not enclosed, but just a little bit of privacy. I like that look.
Yes, both that and the pod on the right, that's about a 5-foot diameter with your seat and your table in front, which is a little smaller than, well, they actually take up about the same amount. The difference with the pods are they're pieces of furniture, but we can do the same along the wall of furniture. The advantage to doing it with furniture is it can change over time and it can move. So those pods can be study pods. Some libraries have them in like a facing 2 different directions and in a row.
But if you could move them, how do you plug in? And don't they have to have access to
Power? Yeah.
electricity?
We need floor outlets. Yes. Floor or wall outlets to plug into. Yeah, but they're all powered. But yes. But like Bulverde has 4 of them, and Susan was moving them apart for when they reopen, so that the pods are farther apart from each other, but people will still have their individual spaces. And if they were booths that were built in and too close together, it'd be much harder to do that. I've just ripped out so many things that I try to do as much of it with movable, flexible things as possible, because things keep changing. I never can predict the future.
Now, a few months ago, I'm sure you got our wish list.
No, I have not seen it.
Oh, okay. The library staff, Jan, Christina, Rachel, PJ, they all came up with, as the staff members working in the library daily, they had a wish list that they presented to the library advisory board, and we all pretty much agreed with it. Increased children's space, a break room, different things like that. That's a wonderful reference for you to have, and I'm sure we can get it to you if you don't already have it.
Yeah, I had just general terms like, yeah, children's area was important in that. But yeah, I know Dan's pulling together the information on those kind of things. Anything that anyone has set, she's passed out a couple emails from different members. So yes, that will be very helpful.
But Danelle, that was the question I was going to ask you. This is a 7-page document that dates back to November 20th. And there's a substantial amount of our needs described in here. I think they started last summer and went through the fall to put this together. So if you have not seen or looked at it, it will give you some ideas as to where we're coming from.
Yes, yes, that'll be very helpful. Other comments or questions?
I have a question. What is the timeline for this project?
Well, that was going to be, yeah, that's how I was going to close. So kind of what's next? So I'd like to get people, well, one, get the information that I just sent Jan asking for in the next week or so, and as well as the homework of, from this group on telling me kind of spaces and that. Then I will work on a draft program. So probably, let me get a calendar here. The following week based on current workload. So, so before the end of the month, probably by the 27th, having a draft program so that we can, and then I can send that out to everyone. Having another one of these, early June, 1st or 2nd, so that we can discuss and get that cut down and prioritized so that we would have a final program that first week in June. And then I would spend a week or so creating a couple concept plans, and we would set up another one of these if we can't meet in person to review the concept plans and come up with a final. And a concept plan isn't a final floor plan, but it's showing options for how to use existing space plus that new addition, looking at where stairs and elevators will need to be to access that second floor. And so I'll do 2 or 3 that we'll talk through kind of pros and cons and probably come up with one that's not any of those, but that's kind of a hybrid that takes the best of each. And we'll discuss them in terms of obviously staffing, but also as how the customers use it. It's always good to look at these concepts and try to put on a different hat. You could be a mom and 4 kids and a homeschooler, or you could be a retiree, or you could be a teen coming in, or a single dad and his daughter coming in to use the library. And think about, how would you navigate? Where would you go? What kind of spaces would you want to use? And so with that and the program, we'll then come up with a final concept. And that at that point is when things like looking at colors and finishes and where outlets are, whether they're in the floor or the wall, until we have that concept plan and a preliminary layout of where shelving is and different things. We can't.
Do you currently have, or do you expect to have, a relationship with the builder of the building? Do you meet with him at all? Is that something that's sort of on your calendar?
I'd be very happy to meet with them. I'm still waiting to get actual real drawings from them, base drawings, and of the existing building, because the one I have of the existing building doesn't match the photos I have. Yeah, I mean, ideally, we were going to do a 2-3 day meeting this month on site, but that can't happen. So, but we've talked about if I need to come down there by myself, verify some things, and meet with the builder, and the builder has an architect as well. So.
Can you
what their schedule is, the builder and the architect on the addition. I don't know where they currently are or what their schedule is.
It went off and on, off and on. They just quit, so I'm just listening.
This is your stuff?
Yeah.
What happened to it, I wonder?
I said I had a very good on the internet in here. Right, and bringing some stuff here.
Dan, are you trying to say something? Dan, are you talking? You trying to say something?
No, I'm not talking. I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. I can hear you. Okay. Very well.
I have a question. Can you clarify, and I apologize if everybody already knows this, I've slept too many nights since we last met, but would you clarify your role when we get the concept and it's approved? What is your involvement then at that point?
That's The way the proposal was written is there were a lot of steps that were optional. So, like the interior design and the FF&E is optional. So if the city elects to have me involved with that, I'm more than happy to do that.
So you would be working with the contractor then to implement the concepts that we come up with?
Yes. And again, I haven't had that discussion with the city manager or Jan about, exactly what, I know the architect the contractor has is under the contractor. So it's obviously design build.
Okay.
And I cannot enforce anything. I could make suggestions, but the city would have to direct the contractor and local architect to do these things.
Hey, Danelle, this is
Yeah.
Josh Ray. I was going to add in just to follow up on Trisha's question and then part of what Sharon was talking about. So the first part of the contract with Danelle is for the layout of the overall library. So let's not just focus on the new addition, but it includes all of the existing library facility, the meeting space, and then the new area. And then the contractor has the architect, and they'll work on their design plans for the building and getting it in. And then after that finish out, then there'll be another contractor brought in that would do anything specific for the library side of development. So for example, kind of going back to your question there, if there's going to be a mass change to the existing area where most of the circulation is, then that would be with this next contractor. It could still be the same contractor, but that's not included in the expansion contract. So then we'd have the opportunity to add that on with Danelle to bring her back as either like a project manager or a concept manager to work with that person to develop out how the movement would occur. So we're talking about multiple contracts to get from start to finish.
Hey, Josh, I might add too that I talked to our builder when I told him that a few weeks ago or a couple of months or so ago, told him that Danelle was going to be coming on board with us. He was very happy to hear that she would give us some direction, like on where to put the electrical outlets and things like that. So he was happy to have her input.
And we've added that into the scope of work, Jan, so that as we sign that contract, hopefully this week with the contractor, that we will, all those items are in the scope, and we just guarantee that we get the product that we want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we didn't want to double spend money to have something put in and then have to have it changed after, with the different plans.
So Josh, does that also include for things like lighting and getting the right foot candles and stuff in the library?
So again, I think there'll be two separate contracts on there. So the answer is yes. The end game is we've got to make sure that we get all the correct lighting in. The first part of the review, which you'll be part of that with this current contractor, is what is the basic structural lighting that we will include, and then if the second round of build out includes different additional lighting that might be different locations, then we would add that in the second round. So my thought is that first build out for the new structure is to make sure that we have the lighting as close as possible completed.
Yeah, you definitely, that would be the most efficient, both time and money to do it.
And I think that my thought is that as you're looking at the existing library, that potentially you're going to come back and say there's a way to maximize or to make the lighting better on that side. And maybe there's some changes that we end up doing on that next contract for the existing structure.
This is Bruce. Another thought I just had talking about lighting. If there is a way to incorporate skylights into the new building, that would certainly cut down on the amount of interior lighting we'd have to have.
Well, I agree skylights are nice, but it cuts down the amount some of the lights are turned on because you can do daylight harvesting. But libraries are open in the winter at 8 o'clock at night and it's dark. So you still have to have the right amount of lighting level, but you can save money operating it by using LEDs and doing light harvesting. And we can do that with the right now one whole wall, or there looks like there's going to be a fair amount of glass. And as long as it's good insulated glass, we can have lighting in there that has sensors on it. It'll turn off when they're not needed. Again, that's a very easy thing to do.
Hey, Danelle, is there not an acoustics issue with the skylight too?
No, not, I mean, if you had a whole glass ceiling, yes. But just having some skylights would not cause any problems.
Isn't the current design a 2-story? You're not going to get skylights on an undeveloped second story.
Correct. Yeah, Sharon's right. It's a 1-story with a mezzanine second. And so anything that would be hidden by that mezzanine level would be restricted. But as Danelle said, right now you've got that front that has the ability to have that natural light coming in with I forget the proper term, but with the tinted glass on the front. And then you have some windows on the side too that have the potential for additional lighting coming through in that natural light. Yeah, we don't want to make it an enclosed can, but we don't want to have it all the light in the world coming through that we can't control either. So I think that'll be the fun part of balancing that lighting.
I have a question. Are the libraries that have those all those windows on the front still happy with them as far as the noise or their heating and air costs, anything like that? Are they still happy with them?
Everyone I know is, yes. Insulated glass, noise-wise, is pretty close to a wall, solid wall. In our climate, it's nice to have them on the north or the south. You don't want them on the west because the west afternoon sun just goes really deep and glary. North light's diffused, and south overhangs can protect it. So
I'm coming from a school background, and I just know that large areas that were all windows were just extremely loud. But then I'm talking about a school cafeteria versus a library. But I just want to make sure that didn't affect the noise.
no, I mean it's a reflective surface, a little more than a solid wall, a gypboard wall, but not much. A lot of the reverberation comes from the floor and the ceiling. So if you have a hard floor and a hard ceiling and a glass wall, yes, it would be very reverberant. And those are things we want to talk about. The flooring is a big issue. There's new kinds of flooring. There's flooring called soft flooring that's made with recycled water bottles. And it's very durable. Most people think it's carpet. We've used it in a number of libraries. Plano, we put it in their city hall at the entryway over an existing tile floor because of acoustical reasons. And they're very pleased with it. Other libraries are using it under the automated book sorting systems in that with carts rolling all over. So it's really durable. But Also, a lot of carpets like upholstery are bleach cleanable now. So you can disinfect, you can, there's just, materials are much better than they used to be. So you have.
I have a question about the maker spaces. What kind of staffing would you require, is usually required to have a maker space? Who usually utilizes it in like actual reality? And how much space is it usually square footage wise?
Those are all good questions, and there's no set answer. A maker space, a media lab, to me, it's a multi-purpose space that can be used lots of different ways. One of the things I really like about, and the difference, most people when they say maker space, it's about using your hands. So you're using some kind of tools. But that tool may be a 3D printer that you created a 3D file, and now you're using the 3D printer. Maker spaces don't necessarily have an impact on staff. Usually the programs and the use of it are done by people that would do any kind of programming in a library. The thing we see happen a lot is it's a way to get others involved in the community. So one library in Colorado, the librarian had a friend who was a car mechanic, and he was talking about an engine he was rebuilding. And she said, "Oh, would you do that in our makerspace?" He says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Just come in and rebuild it in space so people can watch." And he did it. And they had more people watching that than half the stuff they've done. Someone else, says, "Oh, I repair bikes. I'll teach people how to, do basic maintenance on their bicycles." So they have a class on bicycle repair. Bulverde got a grant. Now they're in their second, maybe even third year of it, where they create modules. They got a sewing module, a woodworking module, vinyl printing, so you could print clings for windows or banner signs. They have all these different modules they've created, and part of the grant, they have 3 or 4 other libraries that, along with a lesson, it goes to that facility for a month. So if you have a space, you can collaborate with other libraries and share these modules. So this month you can come in and get checked out to learn to use a sewing machine. Now you can, you're free to come in and use it. So I think of them, libraries have always probably the most crowd sharing facility in the community where you could come and get books and videos. When I was a kid, you could get paintings, and record albums and bring them home and bring them back. So now they're sharing things like sewing machines and, fancy editing software. So some of it's hardware, some of it's software, but it's providing resources that someone in the community wouldn't necessarily could afford or want to, unless they know if this is something they would even like to play with and use. So the library is branching out. Some have fishing poles you can check out, because they're by the lake and you can go fishing. So it's a very broad term, and they're used in lots of different ways. But it's also it's not a space that you're expecting library staff to have to do it all. You use others in the community. Someone may come in and teach a watercolor class. Bulverde Library is probably one of the best examples. They have friends and people in the community that come and teach French and chocolate making and calligraphy and watercolor. Every time I was there for a meeting, it was like, oh shoot, they're having the neatest program in that next room. I wish I could take that. And that's the other thing you really want to think about in this expansion. Every library I've worked on in the last 5 to 10 years the expansions have been 90% program spaces and people spaces. So it might be study rooms and conference rooms and multi-purpose rooms and living rooms where the new books are that you can come and sit and visit with your neighbor as you're browsing for new books. And again, these aren't all big libraries. They range. I work on libraries from 1,000 square feet to 200,000 square feet. Right now, I've done probably 30 Packer libraries that vary, again, from 1,000 to 15,000. So I don't know if I really have
This is
about the makerspace, but I call them more multi-purpose rooms that can be, as long as it has storage, it can have a computer class or it could have video editing. The media one part is a little harder in that you need to control light for videoing and sound. They need to be more soundproof if you're going to let people go in there and make music and edit music and not have outdoor sounds in it. It's not hard to make a good wall that doesn't go through, and it's not that expensive. You just have to do it. You just can't have it just, if it has a laying ceiling, you can't have the wall just go 6 inches above the ceiling and stop and let the sound just, go from one space to another. You have to think about it.
Okay, so the makers, I guess in my head, I was thinking like there'd be, so my husband used to go to a tech shop, which is a maker space, and they had, all the sewing machines set up. They'd have the sergers set up, the quilting set up, and, people would just utilize it during the day as a resource, not necessarily, okay, this is a class we're going to be teaching. So I guess that's just what I had in mind.
Yeah, no, and often they'll have the class. So once you know how, then you can, sometimes they have to teach someone how to use the equipment before. But like 3D printers, if you know how to create the right kind of file, you're welcome to come to the library and, and use the 3D printer. Now, and most libraries try not to even charge for the materials, some depending on what equipment they're doing. Again, like Polverde, they bought all this woodworking equipment. And I said, it's noisy and it makes a lot of dust and that. You want to think about, can some of that be done outside? And is there an easy way from where you want to do it to go outside and do woodworking? So there's all kinds of interesting examples. But yeah, like the one I had of Arlington, the sewing, they keep their sewing machines out. San Marcos, we're doing a lot of storage rooms and storage cabinets so that they can bring things out and put things away depending on what's going on. And we're doing one room with tall tables with stools and the other ones nesting flipping tables with stacking chairs so that we're just trying to keep them as flexible to do whatever. Because even ones I did 10 years ago, that one in Schaumburg is probably over 10 years old at the team. It's morphed. They bought in different equipment and, the technology changes. So they're always putting in different things. So it's about flexibility.
This is Bruce again. My wife and I were in California a few years ago, and we went to the library where we had lived. And I was really excited when we started to leave because next to the checkout station was a 3D printer. And I thought, well, how cool is this? So I asked one of the librarians, so how do they use this? And she said, oh, all you can do is push the button and make a bookmark that looks like a lizard. So can you talk a little bit about libraries that have 3D printers and kind of what they do with them?
Well, again, it varies. Yeah, that sounded like it was just a kind of fun thing to watch it make for you, kind of like as when I was a kid, you could put a quarter in and have this plastic mold made at some icon national monument we visited or something. Most it's for people like you design a product. Well, just for the last month and a half, my daughter, who works for the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and runs one of their foundation labs, in her small apartment has had 5 3D printers building the headbands and the face shields for medical profession, and she's made over 1,000 of them. Had 5 or 6 3D printers running all the time. She says her electric bill has gone through the roof. But architects, we use them. So most architects don't have them in their office. Probably more of them do now than when it's been 3 years since I worked in an office. But you know, there's companies you can go and do fancy ones, but the ones the libraries have tend to be smaller. And so if you have an idea and want to design a product, you could bring that file, and as long as it's small enough that that 3D printer will build it, have it built there. There's also 3D printers for in clay. They're called PotterBots, and you can design a vase or a cylinder or something. Again, the right kind of file, bring it, load it with clay, and it will make a 3D ceramic pot. Now it acts very different than a plastic. And there's different materials for 3D printers too, different kinds of plastics and that. But the idea for the library is, again, someone working from their home that has an idea, it's sharing that resource. It could be a small company getting ready for something and design this piece that they want to show someone, go to the library, you know, and have it printed.
So it sounds like you're not talking about just the average person.
Wait.
Well, the average
Did you hear what I
person
said?
could, I mean, many of the libraries, I'm thinking like Grapevine, they've created 5 or 6 different files that if someone wanted one of those objects, you know, could pick that file and have it made. But not everyone has any interest in or need to use a 3D printer. Same thing with software. You know, many libraries are having some computers that have like Adobe Photoshop or some of the expensive software that, you know, an individual wouldn't spend $2,000 for that software to use, you know, once a year. But if they could come to the library and use it, again, it's crowd sharing resources, software and hardware. And it's about lifelong learning and being exposed to other things that are out there. Just like VR technology is not for everyone. There are reasons to use it, to see things in a reality that you couldn't see otherwise.
Hey, Danelle, when I was visiting the Pflugerville Library about 3 or 4 years ago, the former director told me it does take a good bit of staff time, their 3D printer. So there has to be somebody on hand that knows what they're doing. And
yes, they take some maintenance, and they take someone that knows how to use them. Sometimes, again, libraries collaborate with someone in the community, or if there's, you know, a junior college or something local where they'll come in and there's only certain hours that it's available for use, because that's when someone with that knowledge is there. I mean, it's not rocket science to maintain them or take care of them, but you know, they are a kind of technical piece of equipment.
Hey, Jan, Vivian will do it for you.
I was just going to suggest that I bet we could get a teenager to come help us with it.
Yeah, she knows all that. She even does 3D modeling, and she would love that.
Yeah, and that's to me one of the biggest benefits is involving others in the community and sharing that passion and knowledge. Having a space to allow that to happen. It's not about the library having to do it all. Sometimes it's about the space. and providing that for others to offer things to the community. In very urban libraries, these small conference or collaboration tutoring study rooms are used by a nonprofit that's maybe helping the homeless these 3 hours, 2 days a week. Again, the library is this neutral facility within the community, and everyone should be welcome and safe in. And so you collaborating with others, if you have this that.
All right, it is 3:37. I think that we should come to some conclusion right now. I can send out an email sort of to all the members of that are here today and review things. If there's any more questions, I'll ask them to respond in an email. We might, before we do this again, teach people how to use the equipment so that they put on the mute button. Bruce, where are you? And does anyone want to say anything in conclusion? Let's put it that way. Or do you want to summarize, Danelle? Dan, how about you?
I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing.
There's some background. Well, I just, in conclusion, I want to thank everyone for taking the time. And all questions, all information, thoughts, the more information you can share with me, the better understanding I will have of your community. The more, I like to go and sit and observe people using your space. Usually this is a much more interactive, and it's much harder. We're all getting used to some of these new formats. But I do appreciate everyone's great questions and look forward to reading the 7-page or whatever report that the staff and others have put together. That's always very helpful. And again, just remember throughout this process, I'm a resource. I'm there to help challenge you and think maybe a little outside the box, put you a little out your comfort zone, trying to think to the future, but mostly making it as flexible to accommodate whatever's coming next. Because I've seen so many changes over the last 30, 40 years in libraries, and they're going to continue. And this last couple months just throw another whole wrinkle or way that, to me, it shows how important libraries are because people need to stay connected.
Nell, I will get that. I'll go back through my notebook and get you any of that information you were talking about. And also the collection measurements that you wanted. I'll get those. And if you have anything else you need from me, just let me know and I'll try to get you as much information. And you wanted CAD documents,
if I can
right?
get the CAD file, it makes it much easier. Otherwise, I have to recreate it all, and I don't have anything with real dimensions to recreate it all.
Okay. See what we can do with that.
It can be just a plain DWG file is what it's called.
Oh, what is it?
DWG.
Oh, PWG. Okay.
D is in David, dog. DWG.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think I put it in that list of information requests.
Okay.
Now you have a homework assignment for us. Is that correct, Danelle?
Yes. I sent that as well earlier today. And
I forwarded everybody.
Which has, yeah.
Should we put a deadline date on that? Would you like that from all of us by the end of this week, perhaps?
That would be wonderful. The end of the week.
And Jan, what are the plans for opening the library, if any?
We are still researching that and still kind of taking it day by day. And so we'll keep everybody posted. But as of right now, we do not have a firm date.
Dan, I was told that the state library has a really good resource tool they've put together.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Say it again.
I was told that the Texas State Library has put together a really good resource tool. You probably know about it, but on recommendations on how to open.
Yeah, I've been reading those and watching their webinars, and yeah. So and also we're getting a lot of input from other libraries, and as of today, a lot of libraries are not opening doors wide open yet, especially in the larger cities. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know of, I'm not aware of any that have opened yet.
Anybody else?
Have questions before we end the program? Everybody good?
Thanks everyone for your attendance and your participation.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, everybody. This was great.
Thank you. Thanks for setting us up, Dave. We appreciate it.
Yes, Dave, thank you.
So we just hang up, or does David Street disconnect us?
There's a leave button. Do you see a leave button?
He has left. Okay. Turn off.